Do you know what my favorite question was when I was a little kid? Why? Why? Why doesn't God intervene more today? Why doesn't he intervene directly? Why doesn't he intervene and miraculously save people? Save us from suffering, from pain, from hurts. Why? I mean, who here has not experienced painful times? Who, indeed, in our whole world, has not experienced pain and painful times? And one of the most common questions that almost everybody asks when we go through a tough, painful time of suffering is a two-word question. Why me? And sometimes we extend it to 3 words. Why me, Lord? But as one Christian wrote, maybe we should be asking that question, why me, Lord, when something good happens in our lives. And we should ask the reverse question when something bad happens, why not me, Lord? The Christian author Philip Yancey has an intriguing answer for us in his book called Disappointment with God. He wrote, quote, "Some Christians long for a world well-stocked with miracles. The miracle of the parting of the Red Sea. The miracle of water gushing forth from a rock when Moses tapped it. The miracle of manna falling from heaven to miraculously feed the Israelites. For how long? As they wandered through the wilderness. Over and over and over again, miracle upon miracle, God's people experienced. Christians long for a world well-stocked with miracles and spectacular signs of God's presence. I hear wistful sermons on the parting of the Red Sea and the 10 plagues and the daily manna in the wilderness, as if the speakers yearn for God to unleash his power like that today. But the follow-the-dots journey of the Israelites should give us some pause. Would a burst of miracles nourish our faith? Not the kind of faith God seems interested in, evidently. The Israelites give ample proof that signs may only addict us to signs and not to God." End quote. In life, some things are useful and some things are not. I know I like to state the obvious. In Jesus' day, it was no different. On several occasions, the people around Jesus demanded that Jesus give them proof, signs, more signs that Jesus is who he says he is, and who some people claim he is, the Son of God. In essence, they, like us, people today, they said, we live by the motto, believing is seeing. And the more the better, so get busy showing us something. Show us many things so that we might believe. Wouldn't it be great if God did that today? Would the churches be packed? Places of faith full of believers? If we experienced an abundance of miracle after miracle after miracle in our daily lives? For some reason, I don't think so. Every time Jesus responded with the other side of the argument. Believing is seeing. Jesus referred people over and over again to the sign of Jonah, referring to how Jesus would be dead and in the tomb for 3 days before he would rise to life again. And yet, as Jesus said, even if someone comes back from the dead, still people will not believe. And that's true. John chapter 11, the story of Lazarus, one of Jesus' closest friends who died. And Jesus raised him from death to life. People, even then, at that miracle, still didn't believe. Oh, a few of them did believe after Jesus raised Lazarus and he came walking out of the tomb alive, very much alive. But the majority of people did not. And some of them went to the religious leaders of the day to complain against Jesus about that miracle. And that's when the plot began in earnest to do away with Jesus. For 3 years during his public ministry, people around Jesus saw signs and wonders and miracles galore. But they didn't believe. They simply wanted more signs. Today's gospel reading from John 9 is about another sign, a miraculous sign. A man born blind. And the original reading in Greek describes, it sounds more like he didn't have eyes, no eyeballs. And Jesus gave him eyes and vision to see them. The center of the story, a man born with no sight. He receives sight from Jesus and reveals the blindness of the people all around him. His neighbors, the religious authorities, and even the disciples. And the incident starts off with the classic human pondering or the game of blame casting. The disciples asked Jesus when they saw the blind man, okay, who sinned to cause his blindness? He himself? Or maybe his parents? Assigning blame for one's own misfortune or for the misfortune of others is virtually an international sport. We play the game when we dwell on the, okay, why me or why them and whose fault is it anyway? And usually it is very much a useless, harmful sport, casting blame. How often do we hear ourselves or others say about a specific situation in life, well, it serves them right. If only they learned how to budget better, they wouldn't be in such a financial pickle. Or they shouldn't have built their homes so close to the ocean. They should never have settled to live down on a fault line. Oh, the poor must have just done something to deserve their poverty. They bring it on themselves. Assigning blame is so common and so popular that it's almost politically correct. Politically correct. Now who do we blame about everything? That was a clue. Politically correct. Now who do we blame about everything almost? The government. Poverty is the fault of capitalism, government, in North America. The fault of communism, government, in other parts of the world. Children are having a harder and harder time in school. They're not learning the way we used to learn because of government choices to cut education funding. Healthcare is declining because of government choices to cut funding. People's aggression, rudeness, anxiety, fear, unforgiving spirit is blamed on all sorts of things, including the government. Well, if it weren't for the, are we online? If it weren't for the government south of us, that's given permission for fear-mongering in Canada now. We blame governments for so much. And today especially, how many people blame Islamic people for all sorts of bad things happening in our lives, in our country, and in our world? This past week, I had a meeting up in Waterloo, and when the meeting was finished, I was very thirsty. And Conestoga Mall was just a spit away. And so I drove to the mall, I walked in to go grab a drink from the food court. And as you walk in the main doors there's the bank on the one side, Old Navy on the other, and you go a little bit further towards the center where it's open. And there's a little kiosk, and I don't even know what they were selling. There were two people working the kiosk, a Caucasian woman and, for lack of a better term, a brown-skinned woman. And there was a shopper a retired woman shopper who it appeared she was not interested in buying anything from the kiosk. But as I approached, I could hear her shouting at the brown-skinned woman. And I didn't know what she was shouting about, but as I drew closer and about to walk by, the person working there, the woman working there, caught my eye, almost pleaded with me, so I stopped. You know me. I stopped and I listened, and I couldn't believe my ears. She was yelling, ranting and raving at this woman about immigrants. So I listened for about a minute, and then I tapped her on the shoulder. This is before getting a drink. A clock. And the shopper turned to me. And then she started to rant at me, which was part of the purpose of my tapping her on the shoulder. Deflect the ranting from the employee. And she's telling me the horrible things that immigrants are doing to destroy and have destroyed our country already. And after about a minute, I couldn't listen any longer, and I said, look, I'm sorry. Very calm voice. Look, I'm sorry. But my parents were both immigrants. This country was built by and founded by immigrants. We are where we are today because of the hard work and the ethics of immigrants, and all of us have been immigrants. I said it very calmly. And then I said, and immigrants are not coming to Canada or any other country in the world today because they want to destroy a country. They're coming out of fear for their lives and their families' lives. They're coming because they want a safe place. A place that will welcome them, a place where they can start anew, a place of peace, and a place where they can make a new future for future generations, and they help to build up our country. I was going to say something more, and she cut me off, which is fine. And she railed at me about how she said, yes, I know all of that, but, the big but immigrants are destroying our country. They've already destroyed it. And they all come here with big chips on their shoulders. They just want to ruin everything, and they all should be sent back to where they came from. And the two clerks at the kiosk are backing up further and further away to go around the other side of the kiosk. And I'm like, okay, now what do I say to her? And it hit me. And I looked her in the eyes and I said, pardon me, but who has the chip on their shoulder? And she shut it out. And she turned around and walked away. And I walked and got a drink. And I came back. It was root beer. And I came back that same direction to go back to my car. And the two clerks were at the kiosk. And the one lady said to me, thank you. Wow. We blame segments of society. We cast blame so easily. Whole races of people become a scapegoat to make us feel better, make another group of people feel better. So the huge human question from the disciples to Jesus is, okay, who is at fault? We all want to know who's at fault. Who's at fault for this man's blindness? Well, the whole 9th chapter of John's Gospel is about the bigger picture of the more tragic blindness common to most people. See, the disciples have been taught through the law and the prophets, our Old Testament, or more correctly through the interpretations of what we call the Old Testament, that sin, hurt, injury, and handicap are linked together. Human hurt is a direct result of human sin. So it was logical for the disciples to assume that either the man had sinned, and because he was born blind, that means he had to have sinned where? In the womb. Really? So either the man sinned, or his parents sinned, and they were being punished for their sin by it being taken out on their son. Logical, right? When I was a hospital chaplain in Toronto, it was called at the time Queen Elizabeth Hospital. It was a chronic care facility that people lived in for decades. I met a man there named Robin. And he was in because he was living with MS. He was living the rest of his life out in that hospital with MS. He had come from America several years before. And as I first got to know him, I listened to his story. I heard the story every day that I worked there. The story was, woe is me. If only I hadn't run away from the States. And I said, what do you mean you're running away? I was dodging the draft to Vietnam. In the last year of the Vietnam War, I fled to Canada. And I made my way through Montreal to Toronto. And it wasn't within months of my arriving in Toronto that I came down with MS. God has afflicted me with MS to punish me for my sin of running away from the States. Wow. You and I know a little bit differently about genetics and all that stuff. And the working of disease. It didn't matter what the doctor said to him. It didn't matter what the nurses said, the social worker, anybody. It didn't matter what I said. He was in my office every day for 5 minutes to tell me that. It didn't matter what we all said to him. He only believed what he believed. People will almost always ask, or Robin, you, people will almost always ask, what did I do to deserve this? Why me again, we ask. Well, Jesus affirms, be with me here, please. Jesus affirms throughout the Gospels a principle that one can reap what one sows. But he also makes it abundantly clear that personal suffering is not always directly linked to personal sin. And even when it is traceable to sin in our lives, our response is supposed to be like who? Jesus. One of overwhelming grace and love and hope. But the disciples jumped to the same conclusion that people do today. Oh, he must have done something wrong to deserve it. Or else somewhere down the family tree. I mean, those skeletons in the closet, you know, that you never talk about, but they're always there. Somebody did something down there that this man was born blind. And Jesus answered the blame-casting question this beautiful way. It was not because of his sins or his parents' sins, but he was born blind so the power of God's work could be seen in him. And wow, was it ever seen in him? And that's exactly the same sort of thing, if you notice, that Jesus said 2 chapters later in John chapter 11 after he raised Lazarus from the dead. And the people complained. Some people complained that why didn't he come? He waited 4 days before he arrived after Lazarus had died. And Jesus said the same thing. So that you can see the power of God. Wow. The disciples couldn't see beyond the way they understood life being a direct connection, sin, suffering, every time. The religious leaders of the day couldn't see the power of the blind man's experience because they were too focused. They were blindly focused on the proper keeping of religious traditions, the rules and regulations of how life ought to be lived. And you know what Jesus did wrong? Not that he healed a man, necessarily. Not that he gave a man his sight, necessarily. But when did he do it? He did it on the Sabbath. He worked. He worked. Yeah, he spat on the ground and made some mud out of it and put it on the man's eyes. That was classified as work. And you were not supposed to work. They were so blindly focused, the religious leaders, on the proper keeping of religious traditions. How many rules do we point out in other people's lives that they've broken according to our understanding of the right way to live the Christian life? And what was it Jesus said? First, pull the plank out of your own eye before you start pointing out the speck in your neighbor's eye. To them, the religious leaders, they couldn't see beyond Jesus breaking the Sabbath law because he didn't work in order to give this man sight. For the blind man's neighbors, his healing meant the rupture of the social order that they had all grown accustomed to and were comfortable with. This man just sits in this place on the road begging all the time, and now he's not there. What happened? This isn't right. They were so comfortable with this social order, the way things have always been, that they didn't recognize the man when his sight was restored. In fact, those very neighbors were in so much turmoil by the abrupt change to life as we've always known it, as we've always lived it, that they took the now able to see, formerly blind man to the religious leaders to see if they could sort it all out. And perhaps even to see if we can get life back to normal again, please. Because this is just too upsetting. Jesus said we, his followers, must work quickly to do the work that God has assigned to be done before the period of light ends. And the work of God is the work of liberation, of healing, compassion, forgiveness, welcome, the work of love. Love-filled living and giving. What's needed is that God's people more and more fully follow the Master, Jesus. That we do all that we can to allow the work of God, the miracle of his salvation and transformation, to be evident in our lives and through us into other people's lives. After all, Jesus' real answer to the disciples' question was the man was born blind not because somebody in the family sinned, but so that the work of God, the salvation of God, might be displayed in his life. Sure, the people didn't recognize him because now he could see and he was so different. He was a new man. Jesus was now in his life. He not only had his eyes opened, he had his spiritual eyes opened. He became a fully devoted follower of Jesus. When people see you, when they see me, do they see Jesus more and more clearly in our lives, through our words, through the way we live? Or do they not really see any difference whatsoever, or not much of one? What about the man born blind who suddenly could see? Did you notice the progression of his vision through the passage? When the neighbors asked how he could possibly see, his answer was, the man they call Jesus. Some man named Jesus. When he's before the religious leaders of the day, and they're grilling him about now he can see, and they don't believe that he was born blind, and they ask him, who did this to you and how? He said, he's a prophet. So he's gone from being a simple man with a name, Jesus, to now he's a prophet of God. And then when Jesus encounters him after the Pharisees kicked him out of the worship place, Jesus seeks him out and says to him about worshiping, do you believe? And the man says, who is this that I may worship him? Jesus says to him, it is me who stands before you and speaks to you. And the now seeing, formerly blind man said, Lord, I believe, and worshiped him. Same words as Thomas, when he had his eyes opened after the resurrection, my Lord and my God. Jesus calls us to get over the blame game and to get on with the business, quote unquote business, of living to share his love, his compassion, his grace, his forgiveness with everyone. And nothing in our entire world is more powerful than the God we meet in his Son Jesus, the Savior. The love of Jesus is the only thing that can overcome blindness. His love brings salvation to every heart, every soul that is open to receiving God's gift of salvation and therefore seeing life completely anew. And yes, people will see, and they do see, that you are different from what you were several years ago, even last year. Because believing really is see.